Truly is a blessed assurance. Today's text comes from the epistle from Paul to Titus, chapter 2. These epistles, Titus and 1st and 2nd Timothy, tend to be called the pastoral epistles because they were written in a manner that was less about the church and the things that were happening within the church and more towards the pastor of the church. In this case being Titus, and in the previous two being Timothy. Today we are reading from Titus chapter 2 verses 11 through 15. For the grace of God has appeared, bringing salvation to all, training us to renounce impiety and worldly passions, and in the present age to live lives that are self-controlled, upright, and godly, while we wait for the blessed hope and the manifestation of the glory of our great God and Savior, Jesus Christ. He it is who gave himself for us, that he might redeem us from all iniquity and purify for himself a people of his own who are zealous for good deeds. Declare these things. Exhort and reprove with all authority. Let no one look down on you. The word of the Lord. While we wait for the blessed hope and the manifestation of the glory of our great God and Savior, Jesus Christ. These epistles written to Timothy and to Titus were of a more personal nature. Paul had written them when he was imprisoned. Some say that it wasn't Paul, and they call the author the pastor because he was a pastoral presence. So whether it was Paul or it wasn't Paul, it was written in the name of Paul and was written from one pastor to another. Very intimate, very important, very encouraging, and a reminder of what needed to be done. A reminder of what they needed to accomplish and a reminder of what they needed to focus on. It was not about all the craziness that was happening around them. It was not about falling into traps like others had fallen, but it was about focusing and staying on the right path. To live out a life worthy of God. To allow ourselves to be cleansed by God, to be zealous, to do good things. So rather than just allowing life to be life, he was encouraging Titus to be zealous to do good things. Don't just go with the flow, but instead be intentional. Go out and help. Go out and do. Go out and be with those who are in need. Bring the word of Jesus to all. Bring the gospel, the good news to those around you. And as Francis of Assisi once said, preach the gospel all the time and use words when necessary. Preach the gospel with your actions. Live a life worthy of God. For we know that 80% of communication is everything else but word. Only 20% at most is about words and how we understand it. 80% is about how we say it, when we said it, how we react, how we're moving, how we're speaking. It's about all the other things rather than the words that were said. So even though you may be saying good things, if you are acting in another way, that is not the gospel. If you are saying be good, but are living a life that says do as I say and not as I do, that is not good. If your life is speaking something other than what God would have you to speak, that is not good. Paul is reminding Titus that in this present age, he's not saying that what you did yesterday. He's not saying that someday in the future. He's saying here and now, in this present age. We need to live lives that are self-controlled, that are upright, and most importantly, godly. Godly in our actions, godly in our walk, godly in our words and thought. But this is the easy part, is speaking and saying this is what you need to do. It's always the hard part, is living it out. But we live a life that's not alone. Instead, we live a life in community. It's easy to live a godly life if you're a monk on a mountain by yourself, where it's just you and God and maybe writing material and a Bible. It's easy to say, I'm living out the life that God has called me to. I am living a godly life because there's no one around you. But to truly live a godly life means that you live your walk and you walk your talk every day in the midst of community. No matter what's happening around you, your focus and your sight are set on God and what God has before you. And when God places someone before you, you're able to speak and to do because God is bringing them before you. But sometimes we may lose focus. Sometimes we go in anticipating or looking at one thing, but then God opens our eyes to see something completely unexpected, something completely mind-blowing. Sometimes God just shows off for us. And I use that term because I was blown away by what God can do. Last week, when I was in Bolivia, I went to one of the, what I would call, wonders of the world in Lake Titicaca. It's a beautiful lake. We got there at sunset. It was amazing to see, and we went and we were looking down upon the lake to see the sun setting and shining on the lake. And as the guide told us about the amazing thing about this lake was created millions of years ago when the continents of South America and Africa separated. When the Andes Mountains were created because of the movement of the land, it literally took seawater up 14,000 feet into the air. And there it still sits. There's a saltwater lake 2.5 miles above sea level. It was created millions of years ago, and here it still exists. It thrives with life. You see fish, and we actually ate at a restaurant that caught fresh trout in the lake that day, that morning. It was an amazing view to look down and to see this lake. But I wasn't expecting to see more, and God showed off. One of the wonders of the world, and one of the wonders that I learned, is that when you are 2.5 miles up from sea level, you are above the pollution of light. You are above all of the city lights that prevent us from seeing stars that are beyond just the brightest stars we get to see on a clear night here. But to be able to be above the light pollution, to be able to look up into the sky, and as the sun set, to look up and to see the Milky Way was an amazing experience. I was left in awe of God. I was left in awe of what God had done. To look up and to see this, I was amazed to realize how insignificant we are as a world. I was reminded that we are but a little blip in a vast universe, and yet the creator of all things, the one who spoke and the stars lit up, the one who spoke and the earth was created, Even though we are but a blip in a vast universe, the love that God has for us is immense. And he still worries about this little blue marble in the midst of a vast space of galaxies and solar systems. How amazing is that? How amazing is it that the God of the universe, creator of all things, worries about not only this little blue marble in the midst of this universe, but about you, one individual, in the midst of billions of people on this earth, in the midst of trillions of stars and planets in the universe. You are important to God. Do we understand that? And when we look at the vast, just brilliance of space, I was able to look at, because it's above sea level, NASA actually goes there to do research, and they actually left a telescope that they use every year when they come in, but they leave it there for the communities to use, and I was able to see Saturn with my own eye. I couldn't believe it. I've seen it in pictures, I've seen it on TV, but to look through a telescope and to see a whole other planet in this, our solar system, left me in awe. Reminded me of the scale of God's love, of how even though we feel that God shouldn't, who are we? Yet God still does. What is the love of God? Why is the love of God? Why does God want to have relationship with me, a speck of dust on this planet that is but a small, little, insignificant nothing in the midst of the vast space? How? And that's where our hope comes from. Our hope comes from the Lord. Our hope comes not because of what we can do, but because of what God has already done. And it is from that. It is knowing that God came and became one of us. So imagine even further with me. Not only does God love you as an individual, not only does God love this planet that is a little thing in the universe, but God was willing to become a part of us so that we can be in relationship with God. God moves in unexpected ways, doesn't he? God does things in unanticipated circumstances. I went looking down at the lake and instead was awed when I looked up to the sky. And when our hope is in the Lord, it ripples out. It goes out and helps those who are hopeless. If they see hope in you, they too can become hopeful. Those who are hopeless and struggling, if they can see hope in you, those seeds are planted. Those seeds of hope are given. Those seeds of hope will grow. But only if we are able to plant those seeds of hope. A ripple effect. You never see, or if you ever throw a rock into water, you never see the ripples closing in on each other, do you? You never throw a rock in and then it goes the opposite way. If you throw a stone in water, the ripples always go out. They may reflect and come back as well, but they never close in upon itself. That's how hope is. Hope is a ripple effect. When there's hope in the room, regardless if everyone is hopeless except for one, hope ripples. and the seeds are planted. And those seeds will one day bear fruit because one person had hope. One person believed. Are you willing to be that one person in the midst of so many who are hopeless? Are you willing to be the person who is throwing the hope stone into the water and allowing it to ripple out into other lives? Are you willing to be the hope for those who are struggling and hopeless? I see here more than one person, and I feel like we are all have, even if it's a little bit, we all have some hope. So even us here, us few, can go out and bless many and provide them with the hope that they need. And one day when those seeds grow, they can provide hope for another. And then that person can provide hope for another. That's how this thing called the good news, the gospel, the relationship with God works. It's not about a one-day thing. It's about a continuous effort. It is a continuous ripple effect of hope, of salvation, of encouragement, of blessings. We ripple out and bless those who are around us. And sometimes the blessings come back. And sometimes if our hope is fading, the ripple effect comes back and we are once again hopeful. Paul is reminding us in our text today that we are the people of hope, that we are the receivers of hope, that we are the stones of hope that will ripple through all time. We are the beneficiaries of someone's hope in our past. Today, may we be the benefactor of someone's future hope. May we and our hope provide hope for others and help them to be hopeful once again and to provide hope for another and another and another. Today, the hope within us may be just a seed, but someday, and maybe not too far away, it will become a tree that provides hope and shade for many. So let us become people of hope. May you become a person of hope. And rather than just staying focused on what is below, may the hope that we have help us to look up and to see the grandeur that God has created for us. We are people of hope.